Good morning. This is Inside Nigerian Leadership Television. My name is Winifred Ugbebo. On today's show, we're looking at what the national papers are saying. Of course, we have Nigeria's most influential newspaper on the lineup. And of course, as we normally do on the program, we'll head up to leadership to see what leadership has on its menu this Thursday, October 23, 2025. Leadership's leading story says Dangote Refinery's proposed 10% stake sale excites Nigerian investors, and the story is on page 4 of Leadership. Dangote Refinery's proposed 10% stake sale excites Nigerian investors, and of course, it said it's going to be on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The decision of the chairman of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, to sell 5% or 5% to 10% of his stake on the Nigerian Exchange Limited within the next year has generated significant interest among Nigerian investors. The refinery, currently producing 650,000 barrels per day, targets expansion to 1.4 million barrels per day, positioning itself as a global energy leader and potentially boosting Nigeria's economic growth. Dangote, who disclosed this in an interview with S&P Global, said the move will mirror the approach adopted for Dangote Cement and Dangote Sugar Refinery. He said, "We do not want to keep more than 65% to 70%. The shares will be offered gradually depending on investor appetite and market depth." Capital market stakeholders and investors have described the proposed sale of a 10% stake in the Dangote Petroleum Refinery as a pivotal development that is likely to enhance investor confidence, increasing transparency, and strengthening Nigeria's capital market. The managing director of APT Securities and Funds Limited, Kashimu Kofi, remarked that this proposal signals the company's intention to list on the exchange, which is a positive step forward. Excerpts from today's leading story on Nigeria's foremost newspaper, Leadership. Dangote Refinery's proposed 10% stake sale excites Nigerian investors. Of course, Dangote, the president of the group, did say that it will be listed on the Nigerian exchange within a year. That takes us to other stories gracing the cover of Leadership this Thursday. We have the picture of a damaged car as firefighters work at the site of the kindergarten hit by a Russian drone strike in Kharkiv, Ukraine yesterday. Niger tanker explosion, northern governors mourn as death toll hits 39. Federal government seeks $10 billion credit to address humanitarian challenges. That story is on page 7 of Leadership. 1999 Constitution is irredeemable, Agbakoba. Presidency must remain in South, says Northern Group. New electoral chief Amupitan assumes office today. 2027 Sanwo-Olu, Fashola and Bode back Tinubu as Lagos All Progressives Congress endorses president. And of course, the Chief of Defense Staff says we'll soon flush out bandits, Lakurawa orders. The story is on page 19 of Leadership. And atop the masthead of Leadership, lecturers suspend strike, give government 1 month to address demands. Kanu opens defense, list Wike, Umahi, Buratai, others as witnesses. The story continues on page 4 of Leadership newspaper. And that is also the summation of the cover stories on Leadership cover. We move ahead to page 3 where we have our stand. Today's stand is on arts and humanities. Students need maths too. Of course, my thoughts exactly. Arts and humanities. Students need maths too. There's been a policy flip-flop with the federal government initially saying through the Minister of Education that you don't need maths to read art courses in the universities, that is tertiary institutions. However, after much thought, the same federal government came back to say that no, you actually need maths for any course whatsoever you want to study in the nation's tertiary institutions. And today's stand is basically on that. Arts and humanities, students need maths too. Let's take some excerpts from today's stand. The federal government's recent decision to remove mathematics as a compulsory requirement for students in the arts and humanities seeking admission into Nigerian universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education has sparked mixed reactions across the country. In a statement from the Ministry of Education, the new framework aims to widen access to higher education while maintaining academic standards across all tertiary institutions. While many students and parents may welcome this new policy as a relief from a long-dreaded subject, this decision raises more profound questions about the direction and purpose of our education system. This newspaper believes that this policy, though perhaps well-intentioned, risks weakening the intellectual foundations of an entire generation. Although the Minister of Education, Mr. Tuji Alausa, while commenting on the new policy, said the reform reflects our commitment to expanding opportunities for all categories of students while maintaining the integrity and standards of the education system. However, many Nigerians see it as worrisome. Let's move to the stand where the paper actually take a stand in the stand. It says the removal of mathematics from the ACTS curriculum sends the wrong signal at a time when Nigeria needs more critical thinkers, not fewer. It suggests that thinking can be optional, that analysis can be separated from creativity, and that reasoning can be sacrificed for convenience. No nation has ever developed by making logic optional. As we strive to reform our education system to meet the demands of the 21st century, we must recognize that mathematics is not an obstacle to learning. It is the foundation of understanding. Whether in the sciences or the humanities, it remains the universal language of reasoning. The challenge before us is not to eliminate it, but to teach it in ways that inspire. The future of education lies not in lowering standards, but in lifting minds. To think clearly is to learn deeply, and mathematics remains one of the finest teachers of thought. Today's stand in Leadership newspaper. Arts and humanities students need maths too. Today's stand, of course, quite enlightening. From our stand, we move to the back page where we have Being Blunt with Muazu Elize, and he's writing on what does Ted Cruz want? What does Ted Cruz want? It's a question Muazu Elize is asking in his column today, Being Blunt. And a quote from that column says, Nigerians of good conscience must therefore ask, what does Ted Cruz really want by spreading this dangerous and false narrative? Talking about a Christian genocide in Nigeria, the Senator Ted Cruz is actually proposing a bill to that effect to tag Nigeria a country of particular concern. Before we leave the back page, we always want to visit Ghana Must Go. In the news, PDP to no faith on legality of convention October 31. And Ghana Must Go replied, they still have faith. PDP, over to you. So it's on that note we conclude review of Leadership newspaper this Thursday. Don't forget to log into the website of Leadership for continuation of those headline stories. We move ahead to the next paper on our lineup, and that is Vanguard newspaper. Vanguard is talking insecurity, and this time it's coming from Niger State. The Governor Bago, charges Niger residents, defend yourself. Defend yourselves. But Governor Bako charges Niger residents, vows never to negotiate or pay ransom to bandits. That story continues on page 6 of Vanguard newspaper. And just like Leadership newspaper, Vanguard has similar story on Dangote refineries. Aliko Dangote to sell 10% stake in refinery on Nigeria's exchange. ASU suspends warning strike, gives federal government 1 month ultimatum. State complicity fueling religious killings in Nigeria. Faith leaders. Electoral Act, burden of proof in election matters must shift to INEC, coming from Senate. We move ahead to the stories about the masthead of Vanguard. Of course, we're already having the Anambra Showdown 2025. Soludo, the governor, says our campaign, a divine project, mass movement. And lastly, on the cover of Vanguard, is swap terror threat. Ondo Kogi governments reassure citizens of safety. And that continues on page 5 of Vanguard newspaper. And that also concludes the review of front headline stories on Vanguard this Thursday. For more, log into www.vanguardngr.com. From Vanguard, we move to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian's leading story says federal government begins public finance reforms ahead of new tax regime in January. The story continues on page 6 of The Guardian. Federal government begins public finance reforms ahead of new tax regime in January. Nigeria won't accept any deportees from US, Tuga insists. Federal government releases 32.9 billion naira to primary health care centers as communities to track spending. Northern leaders back Tinubu as opposition cautions APC alleges attacks. Kanuli, Sanwo-Olu, Wike, Umahi, Malami, others as witnesses in terrorism trial. Senate silent on early voting, shifts electoral burden of proof to INEC. Federal government raises concerns over crude supply to refineries, gas flaring. And lastly, on the cover of The Guardian, ASU continues negotiations, suspends 2-week warning strike. And that concludes review of front headline stories on The Guardian newspaper this Thursday morning. Don't forget to log into the website of The Guardian for more stories, www.guardian.ng. We have the next paper on our lineup this Thursday, and that is Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune is still on security issues. It says ISWAP threat, Kogi Ondo move to douse tension. Strategic security measures reinforced, surveillance intensified. Kogi were in constant contact with security agencies. Ondo, leading story on today's Nigerian Tribune. Election petition, Senator shift burden of proof to INEC. And for health, being too skinny might kill quicker than obesity, according to a study. Like I was mentioned earlier, Nigerian Tribune has health story on its cover every day. And today's health news, being too skinny might kill quicker than obesity, is a study that was carried out. And that story continues on page 11 of the paper. Niger tanker explosion, death toll hit 42, while that paper said 39. Death toll hits 42. Gold rises by 60% as central banks shift reserves away from US dollar assets. ASU suspends 2-week warning strike, rejects 35% salary increase offer, gives federal government 1-month window to address demands. And lastly, on the cover of Nigerian Tribune, IMPI reverses inflation rate projection to 14% from 70% for December. And that also concludes review of front headline stories on Nigerian Tribune. For more, log into the website of Nigerian Tribune. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is the Daily Times. The Daily Times leading story this Thursday, October 23, 2025, says reps to probe $460 million Abuja CCTV project as insecurity soars. That story is on page 9 of the Daily Times. NNPCL generates 4.26 trillion naira revenue in August, remits 10 trillion naira to Federation account. Electoral reformation, INEC must be responsible for burden of proof in litigation, Senate. Federal government to invest $220 million in creating job opportunities for young Nigerians. ASU suspends warning strike, threatens fresh action if. MPA insists electoral call-up system remain key to efficient port operations. UK warns citizens against drinking alcohol in Nigeria over methanol poisoning. And lastly, on Daily Times, alleged 3.1 billion naira fraud. I earned 700,000 naira monthly as Governor Suswan tells courts. And that brings to a close the review of front headline stories on the Daily Times this Thursday. For more, log into the website of the Daily Times newspaper. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Blueprint. Blueprint's leading story says Electoral Act, Senate wants burden of proof shifted from litigants to INEC. Create conducive environment for private sector to thrive, Elumelu. Amidst rising insecurity, Rest probe Abuja $460 million CCTV project. With cooking gas at 1,600 per kg, families resort to charcoal sawdust. Expert retailers blame situation on supply disruption, price manipulation. Consumers urge federal government to clamp down on hoarders. We move towards the masthead of Blueprint newspaper. News, Jakubu's achievements at INEC massive, coming from IPAC. Naira looks up as dollar liquidity, imports demand drive volatility. Naira looks up as dollar liquidity, import demand drive volatility. And in sports, Africa's best Osimhen to battle Salah, 8 others for 2025 crown. And that brings to a close the review of front headline stories on Blueprint newspaper this Thursday. For more, log into www.blueprint.ng. One few hours on that note will bring to a close today's Inside Nigeria newspaper review. Don't forget to join us for more on www.leadership.ng for more stories. Meanwhile, till I come your way again, same time, same station tomorrow, my name is Winifred Ogwebo, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word. Thank you for